Illari is the new kid on the block. And yeah, there's not really much to say. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the best and worst heroes to solo carry with. If you can't count on your teammates to help you climb, then you got to do it all yourself. And we're going to rank every hero so you know which one you can truly deadlift with. But do me a huge solid and smash that subscribe button. We're very close to 70,000 subscribers, and let's jump right in. Now, the first character that we got to talk about is Junkrat. And Junkrat can carry, actually, if you're someone that really learns the intricacies of Junkrat, learn a lot of his lineup spots where you can get a lot of easy spam. Tire is a really good ultimate to carry, but outside of that, Junkrat is a bit niche on many maps. He's preferable to defense. There's certain choke points that he's really abusable on, and then there's other maps that he doesn't get as much value. I think he can carry some games and be an absolute menace, but it really kind of also depends on what the enemy team's hero pool is. There are certain characters you could run into that really just can shut you down and deny you. D.Va, flyers, characters like that. I'm gonna put him overall in the C tier. Next up, I do gotta talk about Kiriko, which I think is a very strong character. Definitely has a high carry potential because you can go on these off angles, you can apply a ton of pressure from these angles, you can duel people straight up in a 1v1. If your DPS are ever inting or losing a duel, you can go and help them out of nowhere, bail out your team. There's a lot of things that you can do to hard carry a game. Now, you aren't gonna be able to necessarily create a ton of opportunity against like people that are really dominating your team on like a tank, right? There's nothing you can really do about some tanks. You're not going to be able to necessarily overwhelm the enemy team with a lot of pressure, but you are going to be able to make some pretty proactive plays overall. I do think that the character is about an A tier, but I could see a justification that she deserves a B as well. Speaking of B, let's talk about Torb, which is definitely going to be a B tier character for solo carry. He does do a ton, like automatically just picking him, you do a ton, but I don't necessarily think that you can go super above and beyond with the character. Like, you do a lot automatically, but it's not like you're gonna put an entire game in your back. I mean, when's the last time you ever went against a Torb that went like 40-3? Like, that doesn't really happen that often. Torb brings a consistently high amount of value into a game, but you're not going to be able to necessarily deadlift a team that is inting, not doing anything. Like, you're not going to be able to rack up a crazy amount of kills and just kind of pop off and dominate, but you can do a lot. I'm going to put him in the B tier relative to that. Next off, we do got to talk about Doomfist, and Doomfist is actually a character that does have a very high carry ceiling. He's actually one of the best characters to potentially deadlift a game if you are allowed to do so. I do think that there are a lot of counters to you. There's a lot of really difficult things to play against, but if you find that sweet spot for Doom, you are just a freaking Terminator. You just come in, you just pop off, you kill the entire enemy team. It's like raid boss over and over and over again. And there's some games, and Doomfist know what I'm talking about, where it feels like you keep getting power punches. Every engagement goes right. You don't miss any punches. No one reacts fast enough to your engages, and you're just rolling. But then there's these other games that it just feels like you can't get anything going, and it's really frustrating. But overall, I'm still going to put him at the very tippy top of A tier. The next character that we got to talk about is Mei. Mei's kind of similar to Torb, where if your team is like doing their job all right, like if they're at least existing and not inting, Mei can definitely carry that game. She brings an over than average amount of impact, but she's not going to necessarily be able to win a game or carry a game where your team is getting stomped. You can't really do that all that much on Mei, unfortunately, mainly because she wants to have that poke. She wants to have those opportunities where she can have those value walls. I think that she's about a B tier with Torb, similar to where she just brings a lot of value automatically, but there are going to be some games that are really hard to carry for you. Next up, we do got to talk about Soldier 76, and as far as a solo carry character, Soldier does provide quite a bit in the solo aspect of that. He doesn't really need anybody to do anything. He can take these off angles, pepper from range, not be denied these off angles very easily because he has his heal station. He can incorporate a guerrilla warfare hit and run style strategy where you're taking off angles, poking someone, trying to burst someone down, and then run away. And you combine all of these things with the fact that Soldier is actually fairly decent in the meta. I do think he's actually really strong overall, and on a lot of the new maps in the new game mode, he's actually very good as well, where mobility is king. I'm actually going to put Soldier, I think I'm going to put him in the A tier as well. I think he's really solid. The only thing that's really holding him back from the S tier is because I don't necessarily think that you're going to be able to completely deadlift a lobby like some of the peaks on some other characters that we'll run into in a second. Now, next up, we do got to talk about Mercy, and this is a solo carry, so you're not assuming that you have like a duo, right? Because Mercy with a duo is just ridiculous and definitely would be S tier as far as carry, but by herself, I think that there's a limit to what Mercy can really do depending on the lobby. Sometimes you're at the whim of your lobby. You don't have anyone to pocket. Sometimes you have like a freaking Genji and you got a Tracer and you have no one to damage boost. You're just kind of walking around as like just a mobile healer, which you don't really want to do at all. And yeah, I think that that could be really limiting. Oftentimes you're flipping that, you know, flipping that coin, rolling those dice. I'm going to put you kind of with Junkrat because I do think that it's about the same. Mercy doesn't have the highest solo carry capacity, but there are going to be games where you are doing a crazy amount in that game. But I don't think that if you're solo queuing, it's actually a really hard time to just climb and carry. Some games with Mercy really depends on what your team composition is. Next up, we do got to talk about Reaper, and I actually do think that Reaper is like an A-tier solo carry character. And I understand that he's not particularly good right now in the meta, but if we think about all ranks, Reaper's actually fairly good at the majority of ranks under the Master's rank. And in addition to that, Reaper gets to really take over a lobby in a way that some of these other characters can't. You can heavily abuse a lot of DPS, win the 1v1 against most of them if you get in your effective range. A lot of tanks you just don't care about at all. You could take a straight up fight with characters like Rein, characters like Ramattra, and I do think that all around this character kind of allows you to create a sort of momentum where you channel one fight into another fight win using your ultimate. I'm going to put him in the A tier. I think he's also pretty independent because you have higher health totals and you also have that passive heal that you get when you do damage. So all in all, I'm putting him in the A tier. And the next character that I do got to talk about is Ana. And Ana is a character that gets more chances to carry a team fight than just about any other character. Like other characters get chances, but Ana gets consistent chances over and over again, every single team fight. Really, really impactful abilities. Both nade and sleep are phenomenal. You're nano boosting for tempo, you're nano boosting for combo. There's a lot of things that you could do, not to mention you just do a lot of damage from a very far range away. Your only weakness is your lack of mobility, but that doesn't mean that you can't completely hard carry. In fact, if you outplay people that are coming after you, you can hard carry even more. And I do think that Ana is one of the best characters to solo carry, and she can have some of the highest win rates in the game. If you are really, really cracked with her, I'm going to put her in the S tier. The next up, we do got to talk about Lifeweaver, and Lifeweaver is a character that I kind of want to put similar to Mei and Torb, where it's a character where you're going to be providing an above average amount of impact if you're good with the character. But if your team is complete nonsense, if they're dying, they're feeding, they just nonstop can't get anything to happen, you can't force through a strategy by yourself, right? Lifeweaver needs someone else, needs someone on your team to be competent, and this kind of puts him similar to like Torb and Mei, where you don't want to be getting hard stomped. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm getting hard stomped, let's swap to Lifeweaver, and then all of a sudden we're gonna pop off and carry. No, you need a team that is like maybe a little bit worse than the enemy team, and then Lifeweaver can make the difference, but it can't be an overwhelming getting just completely stomped into the ground versus some of these other characters that I think can still get value even if your team is just getting decimated, and maybe even do things to turn that momentum. You know, like a nade can turn the momentum of people that are being over aggressive, or a Doom can go and find value by himself and make something happen. So now the next character that I have for you is Ramattra, and I do understand that Ramattra is having a bit of a hard time in the meta currently. Up against characters like Orisa and Bastion can be a frustrating time, but as far as the majority of ranks, if we look at most ranks in the game, not just at the very tippy top high level perfect play, Ramattra is just a really, really solid solo carry tank because he's so flexible. He gets to play the game in a lot of different ways. You can just literally giga carry if you time your engagements properly. Your ultimate is still one of the best, if not the best ultimates in ranked play. And yes, I understand nades are frustrating, sleeps are frustrating, javelins and stuff like that are frustrating in the meta, but just in the majority of the time that Ramattra has been played, and in the majority of ranks even still now, Ramattra is still a slam dunk solo carry god. I'm going to put Ramattra in the S tier. Probably will be low S at the end of the video, but still a character that I think people are sleeping on him a little bit much due to super recency bias and due to like some objective meta that doesn't really matter in the majority of people's ranks. Next up, we do got to talk about Brig, and Brig's a lot of the same of like Lifeweaver, a lot of the same of Torb and characters like this, where Brig just exists as a character that is really good at denying what the enemy team is doing, is really good at kind of stabilizing a team, but you don't really want to whip out Brig when you can't get anything to work and make happen, or like your team's just getting hard stomped and your DPS are getting diffed over and over again. this is not going to be the swap that is going to make that difference. Now, there is a caveat here, though, because I do think that Brig is an amazing character to swap to, specifically when you're dying to dive, right? Over and over again, getting dove, or if your other support is the one that keeps dying and you need to protect them. Like if your Ana is feeding nonstop, this character can do it, just like how Torb can do it. Be the character that denies your team from feeding. But overall, you're not going to be able to necessarily go and enforce your will on the enemy team. Oftentimes, Brig is inherently a passive character, not a character that wants to be super aggressive or go make plays herself. So this means that you're not going to be able to deadlift nearly as much as some of the other characters in the game. And while you can prevent your team from losing faster, you're not necessarily going to be able to just completely flip a game when your team is just doing nothing at all. Next up, we do got to talk about Reinhardt, and Reinhardt surprisingly has a lot of solo carry potential. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, you do a shit ton of damage, like a shit ton of freaking damage. I'm actually going to put him here. You do a lot of damage just by yourself. You have good mobility, so you can close the gap in on people that don't respect how far you could move. And your shatter is probably one of the best ultimates in the game for ranked, just to carry fights. You don't have to get super greedy with your shatter. You don't have to get 5-man shatters, but you could just carry fights and turn fights with shatter over and over again. Ryan's this menace that if you're willing to be flexible with how you play him, not playing Ryan to just enable your team, but playing Ryan to be aggressive, be offensive, make plays, take space, you can deadlift a game all on your own. I'm going to put him in the A tier relative to that. Next up, we do got to talk about Bastion, and Bastion's another weird one due to recency bias, because yes, he's strong right now. On average, he does get a decent amount of value, even though he's actually rather easy to counter. If you watch my video on it, I'll tell you how. But specifically, Bastion is kind of at the whim of your team a lot of times, where especially if you're like in a Bastion mirror, or depending on what the enemy team is playing, depending on how much resources your team sets you up with, Bastion can be good, work, bad. Sometimes you feel like it's not even in your control whether or not the Bastion play works at all. And I think that he's kind of similar to these two, where it's really situational on not only what the enemy team's up against, what they're playing, but also what your team is doing to help you. I'm going to put him in the C tier as a solo carry pick. Now, if you talk about a duo carry, Bastion could be one of the best characters in the game if you get some guaranteed help, guaranteed assistance with setting up the Bastion. But random solo queue lobbies, I wouldn't even want to just like lock a Bastion when my team are going some random dives, or no one looks behind to even help me if I need a little bit of help from a freaking tracer behind me. Definitely could be a frustrating time. The next character that we gotta talk about is definitely Genji. And Genji has all the means to just destroy a lobby if you're really, really good on Genji. But I don't necessarily think it's relative to the skill of the lobby, right? You have to be a lot better on Genji to truly take over a lobby, or it just has to kind of line up properly for you, right? They're playing characters that you could really easily dive, a combination of like Ana, Zen, a couple other characters. And most of the time, if you start popping off against those type of characters, people are going to swap to counter you. So you're not going to be able to get away with bloody murder. You still can really carry a game, though, just if you're good enough to just take over that game, take over that lobby. I'm going to put Genji about A, pretty high up. He's kind of the character that you want to play and dominate a lobby. If you really need to carry a lobby and your team's getting farmed, Genji can go and farm them back. You basically can use your team as a distraction and kill the enemy team. I don't really know if that's 100% true, but Genji can definitely carry a lobby. Everyone has gotten destroyed by a freaking god Genji at some point or another, where the Genji is like, I don't know, 40-3, like we talked about earlier. Now I do gotta talk about Hammond, and before I would have put Hammond higher up on this list, but more and more what I've been finding is that unless you're a type of Hammond that knows every exploit, all the freaking triple boobs, crazy techs, it's pretty hard to solo carry a lobby. Now if you have other divers and people that are gonna help you, sure, it can work out just fine, but you're not really going to always have enough assistance to make this character work. And by himself, sometimes it feels like you're just slamming into the void. There's certain characters that you could do nothing against. Yes, you don't need a lot of resources. Yes, you can kind of find a way to get value yourself, but it's going to be really dependent on your skill on this character, and it's also going to be dependent on what characters the enemy team plays. There's certain characters that just feel like they just completely shit on you, and there's nothing you could do. I'm still going to put him, I think I'm gonna put him mid B tier. I think he can solo carry, but he's a bit harder to solo carry than some of the other options. Illari. Now, I do want to talk about Illari because, you know, Illari is the new kid on the block. Very strong, can definitely get a ton of kills, and has crazy high burst damage for a support, has a really powerful ultimate for a support, and yeah, there's not really much to say. Putting Illari, no, I'm putting Illari in the S tier, for real. This character allows you to just get tons of picks potentially, help create opportunities where your DPS are lacking. You're almost just, in some games, effectively partially a support, partially a DPS, where you can fill in the gaps of two different types of people. And yes, I understand that you don't have as much proactive utility as Ana does, right? Nade and Sleep are super strong. You don't have those, but for ranked, sometimes just getting kills, dinking people, having high burst damage, having good mobility so you're harder to dive, and then having a means to be able to heal your team and focus on something else. These things are really great for ranked. Due to the chaotic nature of ranked, really great. I'm putting Illari in the S tier as a character that can 100% solo carry a lobby. And I know y'all have seen it, the Illaris on the enemy team, or maybe on your team if you're lucky, that are just taking over lobbies, and it's 100% possible. So yeah, S tier. Next up, we do gotta talk about Cass, and there's not really much to say about Cass. He's pretty dependent on the team, but he can pull off some pretty hype plays as well. He's just a little bit weak right now in the meta, and I do think that he's probably about a B tier, where he can carry, he can get some value, but he's not going to be a character that is going to work if your team is just a weird composition, a dive composition, or they're getting stomped. You're not going to be able to find value on your own as easily with Cass. You would much prefer a structured team, even if you're at a slight disadvantage, you know, a team that's not crumpling, where you could find a window to get value, as opposed to your team just getting rolled. Now, I do got to talk about Zenyatta, who is a tricky one for me personally. I feel like I'm going to be really biased on the Zenyatta section, because I personally feel like Zenyatta can really deadlift a lobby, but I do understand that Zenyatta is not only difficult to learn mechanically, but he's also difficult to position with, and there's certain characters that can make your life a living freaking hell. Characters like Sombra, characters like Tracer. I don't necessarily think that these people that play Tracer and Sombra aren't really that good to punish you that much when you are in the lower ranks of play, which gives you an opportunity to kind of go rampant. But eventually it will happen. I'm still going to put him at the lower end of A tier. You can 100% deadlift a lobby as Zen, getting 5 balls, getting freaking out-dueling enemy DPS, allowing your tank to always win the tank 1v1. Even if they're just a worse tank straight up, you could change that. Zen, I'm going to put him in the A tier. Really solid character. Now, we do got to talk about Orisa as well. And Orisa is just really strong right now in the meta, which puts her quite a bit higher than she normally would be based on her kit. Like, the way that her kit plays, she's a very middle of the pack character. You know, a character that doesn't really go above and beyond, but doesn't really do anything wrong. Just kind of exists there, creates attention, creates space, but doesn't do anything crazy. Not gonna go get a whole bunch of kills or do anything like that. But because they buffed her, because she's super strong at the meta right now, she gets a couple of points up. So normally she would be probably like mid B tier, but right now she's at the top of B tier. A character that you can definitely lose playing Orisa. Just because Orisa is really strong in the meta, you can lose with this character. You're not gonna win every game with this character because you're not capable of enforcing your will on the enemy team as much as you are at denying what they're trying to do. Like, Orisa's a lot better at denying what the enemy team's trying to do than she is at going for her own proactive plan. Like, Doomfist, not really that great at denying, but he's really great at going and enforcing his will, or at least trying to. Now, he could be denied in that, but you could hypothetically get like 36 kills, go 36-3 on Doom and just take over a lobby. I don't really see you doing that on Orisa nearly as much. So yeah, B tier. Now, you might think that because Hog has a hook and he has a breather and he's a really good character for hooking people into wells and he's independent, then I'm going to put him somewhere rather high on a solo carry tier list. But nope, I'm not. I'm putting him in the D tier. This character, don't play this character. He's unplayable. I'm going to stay in this camp. If you're playing specifically on well, or if your name is Six or I'm Mushroom, you can lock this character. Otherwise, I would not suggest it. Good luck. When Ana is the most played support in the game, when Orisa's the most played tank in the game, yeah, no, I would not suggest playing this character at all. I mean, even outside of those, even without those things, the character's already bad, and now the character's like giga bad. So yeah, nope, would not suggest it at all. So I've actually talked to a couple of sim mains recently about the sim change, and the sim change doesn't really make the sim crazy weaker than she was before if played perfectly. She actually is fine, especially in Orisa meta. She's probably a bit stronger in Orisa meta because you get to play near the Orisa. There's these long attrition fights and things like that, but you have a lower carry ceiling now because you're less flexible in the way you can play her. So you're not as versatile anymore. You're not going to be able to carry as many games as you're losing in deadlifting lobby, but you are going to be able to like do that little job where you're just kind of sitting in the neutral and like farming and just applying pressure. You can do that just as well and probably better in this meta in particular. Unfortunately, this character was probably an A tier before, but after talking to a lot of sim mains, I would probably put sim, you know, somewhere around here. Maybe that's a little bit too low, but just what I've heard from sim mains, just a lot harder to deadlift these lobbies that you're losing in, and a lot harder to be versatile and adaptable on this character than she was pre-changes. Now, the next character that we got to talk about is Zarya, a character that is perfectly capable of just completely hard carrying a lobby in the right hands. Yes, there are problematic characters for you, but if you are in the, I would say, diamond rank or less, maybe plat rank or less, I think Zarya is legitimately an S tier solo carry character. Very, very strong, very reliable, a character that can just put the game in her backpack. You get high charge, you can run around, and you're just a beast. But for most ranks, I still think she's strong, but you can feel like you need a little bit of assistance at times. You know, nanos here and there, people to help you when you're being swarmed, people to help get that tracer off your freaking over your shoulder that keeps poking you. I think still an A tier though. Still an A tier. About soldier impact level in a different way, but I'm gonna put her about there as a solo carry. Ashe. Ashe is another one that is probably pretty high up this list. Definitely can carry a lobby, has a very, very strong ultimate. I'm curious if I should be putting her in mid A or low S. It's pretty close. It's pretty close, to be honest. I actually do think that I'm going to put Ashe in the S tier. Ashe is really good at contesting a lot of characters, really good at contesting Tracer, really good at contesting Flyers, doesn't need a pocket, has a great ultimate. There's not really much more to say. I do think that Ashe is an S tier character and is my #1 pick for a character that if you're looking to pick up a hit scan and you're in any rank, Ashe is always impactful in basically every rank. I don't think you need to hit every single headshot to get a lot of value out of her, but if you do get a lot of headshots as you get better, you're going to get even more value out of her. A really great proportional increase in the skill to rank ratio. Like Sojourn here, I would say Sojourn is pretty bad in the lower ranks. Like there are better options if you're not able to consistently hit railgun headshots and you're not that reliable on the character, but she gets really, really strong in the high ranks of play. I still think that Sojourn's a little bit tricky now that we pivoted to Sojourn. Definitely a character that could just destroy a lobby, can do it a lot better with a Mercy Pocket. I'm gonna put Sojourn in the A tier. A little bit less reliable than Ashe, I believe, if we're talking about the majority of ranks to hard carry a lobby. And yes, you would much prefer having that Mercy Pocket way more than Ashe would. I think Ashe can be played completely independently and still get a ton of value. Sojourn really wants that pocket. Now, Tracer's a tricky one, right? Because Tracer is definitely like the solo carry character. And I'm going to put her in the S tier. Of course, I'm going to put her in the S tier. I have to put her in the S tier. But I do understand that Tracer always isn't going to be able to have her way. There are a lot of things that are very, very annoying to deal with. Brig could be very annoying to deal with. Kirikos that are always peeling could be annoying to deal with. Torb turrets, very, very annoying. I understand that there's all these things. Illari can now threaten you. Very annoying. There's so many things that are super annoying on Tracer. The thing about Tracer, though, is you can adapt your play to always get value on this character if you're good with her. You don't have to always go in. You don't have to always be that person that just goes in and one clip, pulse bomb. You can always find a way to get value, especially in ranked. Yes, it can be hard. Yes, you're going to need a lot of skill to make it work. But this character has higher actions per minute than just about any other character in the game. Has a higher carry ceiling than almost every character in the game. I'm not putting it at the tippy top because I think these other characters, there's a lot of other characters that can get value easier. But this is not a how easy is it to solo carry tier list. This is a how can these characters solo carry? Like how much can they solo carry? And I think Tracer can really, really solo carry a lot of games that other characters cannot in any meaningful way. So she deserves an S tier. In the same vein, I'm actually going to put Widow higher. I understand that Widow's pretty weak in the meta. I understand that she's kind of weak overall right now. And only people that are really good on Widow are going to get any value on her. But in those situations, the people that are really, really good on Widow can definitely hard carry a lobby with her. And I could maybe justify putting her in the B tier based on her objective power level, but if you are really just hitting every freaking headshot, you can definitely still solo carry a game. And yeah, I'm just gonna put her in the very, very low end of A tier. Next up, we do gotta talk about Hanzo. Hanzo is a character that I would say just has a crazy high solo carry place right now. Like, he can just solo carry a lot. You take these wide off angles, you can win duels with DPS, you can destroy characters like Ashe, you can destroy characters like Tracer, kill Anas, just run away from tanks that you don't care about. He's a very, very good solo carry character right now. I'm gonna put him in the S tier for a solo carry list. Yeah, he can solo carry. I'm actually gonna put him above Ramattra, a little bit below. Let's do this. Is this fair? I think that's about right. Hanzo can, if you're hitting your shots on Hanzo, you can just completely deadlift a lobby. You're getting these insta kills and just getting these huge amounts of advantage for your team before the enemy team can pop their utility to deny you, where some amount of attrition is really hard to break through right now, where it feels like everyone is just getting healed up to full right away. Hanzo breaks that parity right now as being the one character that can consistently one-shot, and he can do it from range. So yeah, S tier. Sombra is a little tricky. Part of me wants to put her in the C tier because I do think she's better when you have some amount of help with your team, but I want to give her more credit than that because you can definitely carry a lobby with her. I'm going to put her in the low B tier. You could definitely carry a lobby with this character. A lot easier if you do have people that are willing to help you and dive in with you and stuff like that, but you can definitely be very disruptive. You can farm certain types of characters over and over again, build your EMP. Yes, it's a little bit longer to build EMP now, but still very powerful ultimate overall. And if you're really competent with this character, you can just be disruptive in a certain way that just brings a ton of value to your team. So I'm going to put her in the low end of B. Not quite as situational some of these, where these are either, a lot of times these characters are either like S or unplayable, depending on the comp, depending on the map. But yeah, Winston. I'm actually gonna put Winston here. And I understand this character can completely deadlift a lobby, but, and this is the big caveat, he needs a couple of things. Winston is just like straight up gonna be worse than characters like D.Va or Doom unless you have a hard committing team to dive in with you. Winston is all about enabling his teammates with that bubble. He wants people to help him go in, and when he's creating space and getting value, he wants people to capitalize off of that, as opposed to characters like D.Va that can play slower, can peel, can poke, stuff like that, and Doom that can build a power punch, build an ultimate, and go in really hard, hit hard, and get a whole bunch of value by himself. He doesn't even need a follow-up if he does it properly in the right engagements. Winston almost always needs a follow-up. He's not going to be able to do things alone. He's very, very team reliant in a lot of ways. Now, if you have a team that is doing things and helping you a little bit, within that, you can be a giga carry Winston. Like, there's I'm not saying that there isn't a huge skill ceiling on this character, where if you have two dive teams and one team has a good Winston and one team has a bad Winston, the good Winston dive team will win almost every single time. But it doesn't matter how good of a Winston you are if you're not in a dive team. If you're just playing with a random team, you could be the best Winston in the freaking world and you would have a hard time getting value in that. So that is kind of what I'm talking about, as opposed to Doomfist is a character you can lock in pretty much any composition. If you get the right setups, you can definitely make some magic happen. D.Va is a character that I think is always bringing a certain amount of value to the table no matter what. Speaking of which, I'm going to put D.Va right about here. Character that is bringing a good amount of value in every single game. Doesn't necessarily get to completely overwhelm the enemy team, but she's really good at spotting mistakes and taking advantage of mistakes in a way that other tanks cannot. Isolated DPS can go kill them. Isolated high ground can take it, can go for this play, that play, can deny a Tracer pulse bump, can deny someone's initiation, can eat ultimates. There's a lot of things that she can do. A lot of these are like really small things that kind of build up. Definitely not enforcing her will nearly as much as some of these other characters, but she can definitely deadlift a lobby if you're really, really good with her. Sigma. I'm gonna put Sigma probably about, actually, can Sigma carry harder? I think Sigma can actually carry harder. I'm actually gonna move Widowmaker to like here. Let's move Widowmaker to here. I'm gonna put her right there just because she's just really weak right now in her state. Of course, we know that like pre-nerf Widowmaker would definitely be like an S tier in a list like this, and that's kind of just showing you how far she's fallen. But yeah, Sigma is a character that gets to attrition at a game. He does want a character that is a bit, or a game that is a bit at a parity. He doesn't necessarily want a game where he has to turn the tides of a stomp or anything like that. And it's very frustrating to play Sigma when you're snipers. You're like, let's say your Hanzo keeps losing the Hanzo battle over and over and over again. You can't get anything cooking. But there's a couple of things that Sigma can do really well. He can really enforce his will on certain positions on the map, taking a high ground, taking an off angle in a way that other tanks cannot, where he's very oppressive to push through. He's very oppressive to deny by anything besides another tank. Like a tank can meet him, but no one else can. 2 DPS cannot fight a Sigma by themselves. A support and a DPS cannot fight a Sigma by themselves. They're going to have a really hard time doing so. So that is why Sigma can kind of take these angles and really carry. And sometimes, every once in a while in your games, you have a Sigma that feels like he's pushing way too aggressive. He's way too far, and he keeps getting kills. He keeps being disruptive. You can really do that on Sigma and kind of push past the normal bounds of where you should play and enforce your will on the enemy team. That's really what you're doing. You're enforcing your will. So yeah, I'm going to put him in the A tier. He still wants the game to be played by his pace. If he can't figure out a way to control the pace of the game, sometimes he gets overwhelmed. Characters behind him, tracers in his back, blah, 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 blah. Next up, we do got to talk about Junkrat Queen. I'm putting Junkrat Queen in the S tier. I do understand that maybe in the meta, she's not the best character to play right now. But in the majority of the games that are played, especially if you're good enough on the Junkrat Queen, you have good timing, Junkrat Queen can giga carry a lobby. You can chain cleaves into freaking, or carnages into ultimates, into just completely taking over a lobby. You can fish for people with your knife. If you're hitting a lot of jagged blades, you can pull people away at a position and just get kill after kill. She can be a menace in the right hands. And I'm putting her in the S tier as a solo carry god in the right hands. Yes, she's hard, similar to Tracer, but she's definitely a character that can completely solo carry a lobby. So yeah. Now, Lucio, I'm sorry, but I'm putting you near the other characters here. I'm actually putting you low in the C tier, close to the D. And hear me out, Lucio mains. I understand that Lucio is a really objectively good meta character in a coordinated team, but he's already weaker in rank than he is in pro play by a mile, because teams do not always operate on the same axis. Like, Lucio is better when everyone is of hive mind, right? When everyone is doing the right thing together. Everyone's utilizing speed at the same time. Everyone's initiating at the same time. There's a lot of comms. How many games are you getting consistent comms? How many games are you even getting where your team has an advantage and people are pushing, or your team has a disadvantage and they're retreating, or you're amping up and people are going forward? How many games are you even getting of that? You're not. You're just not. And most of the time you have to play this like really boop-oriented or frag-oriented style of Lucio that is not getting even nearly close to the value that you would like to on this character. Now, if you're playing in a duo, or if you're underneath the Grandmaster rank in a trio, yes, you can time things together with the Lucio and get some crazy plays and value. But in a solo carry environment, good luck deadlifting a game on Lucio in the same way you can other characters. So yeah, sorry Lucio mains, you're a C tier, honestly close to a D tier. Next up, we do got to talk about Echo. I think that Echo is a very good character to solo carry with in the right hands. A bit tricky to play, still very strong. I'm going to put Echo in the A tier, middle of the pack. Let's actually swap these positions like that. Echo can really do a lot. The ultimates can be very, very strong. You can provide a lot of pressure. You don't need a pocket to get value. So yeah, there's a lot to love about this character. Very, very strong character that can really shape an entire lobby around her if you're really good with her. But also one of the hardest characters to learn, and similar to Tracer, is very, very difficult to learn. But there are going to be some annoyances that you have to deal with. Double hit scans, D.Vas are going to be annoying, Torb's going to be annoying. So it's not like you can just free reign on this character, but she attacks in a very interesting axis. She's very, very strong, and yeah, I'm going to put her in the A tier. Next up, we got to talk about Pharah, and of course, Pharah Mercy would be S tier, but we're talking about solo carry. Now, just because you're locking Pharah in solo queue doesn't mean you won't get a Mercy, so yes, you could get a Mercy occasionally and carry a lobby, but really, without a Mercy, character's very hard to get value with at all. I'm going to put her in the C tier. Most times, she's probably going to be solid B. And then with the Mercy Pocket, she's going to be S. But another tricky one to place because of her reliance on her team. In this particular, her reliance on Mercy. I would say that on average, you're going to get a Mercy Pocket more than not, just because Mercy is a pretty popular character. But even that is going to be a bit unreliable, where Pharah mains understand that if you want to go around the enemy team, if you want to go to the skybox, if you want to go for a long flank, if you want to do anything, there's a lot of Mercies, depending on the rank you're in, that just won't go with you. They won't prioritize you. Your you're going for a play, you're trying to get something done, they kind of just look around and they see anyone low and they leave you, right? And as a Pharah, you need a consistent, reliable source of help. You can't ever have that help leave you, because what you're trying to accomplish is more important. Like, if you're enabled and you pull off a play, you could get 2, 3, 4 kills and carry a fight all by yourself, and you need a trustworthy Mercy to do that with you. Like, they need to trust in you that you're not going to just do nothing for the next, 5-10 minutes, but you need to also trust in her that she's going to stick around with you, and that's really not really going to happen as much in a random lobby. A Mercy, even if you get a Mercy, there's no guarantee that they're going to actually stick with you, unless maybe in like the first 20 seconds you get like a boop off the map, get a kill, they're like, oh look, this far is sick. But other than that, it's not going to happen that often. Baptiste. I'm actually going to put Baptiste about where I put Zen. Don't think he has much offensive value, but he makes it up in other things. His mobility, the fact that he can still do damage and still get kills, and also he can bail out people in sticky situations. I will say that he doesn't have as much burst as a character like Illari, where Illari is going to be able to get more mid-fight picks, because yes, Baptiste can do a lot of damage, but he's harder to hit those shots and get that consistent damage. It's like the difference between slow poke like a soldier and like a dink like an Ashe, right? Dinking is more powerful in these little poke fights, not to mention all the other things that Illari brings to the table. And he doesn't have any proactive utility like Ana does with Nade that can be thrown proactively. All of his abilities are reactive. So it can feel a bit hard to carry a lobby. Now, I will say that you can really enable certain characters that if they live, they can take over a lobby, like Bastion. So that's nice. And he can do a lot by himself too. I'm not knocking him for that. So yeah, I'm putting him in the A tier overall. Still think he's a pretty solid character to solo carry game. Next up, we do gotta talk about Moira. And I actually do think I'm putting Moira in the S tier as a solo carry character. Mainly because, first off, I understand that she's better in a dive with more people going in with you. But because she gets to play very fluidly and she gets to take advantage of opportunity in a way a lot of other supports can't, she can put on many masks, whether that's an aggressive style or a passive style or anything in between. You kind of combine all these things together. The many ranks, she's very strong the lower in rank you go. She gets a lot of value shutting down characters like Ana, for instance, have a really hard time dealing with the Moira that's aggressive. I'm gonna put her in the low end of S. I could see somewhere mid A as well, but definitely let me know if you agree or disagree with this list, the solo carry ranked tier list. But smash the like, subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and please let me know what other videos you want to see in the comments down below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.